National headlines: a dramatic restructuring of government continues under President Donald Trump. As national correspondent Matt Galka reports, buyout offers and downsizing continues among multiple federal agencies.
Almost all United States Agency for International Development workers abroad are being pulled from the field and put on leave. The notice gives a Friday deadline for the foreign aid group known as USAID, and it's the latest in the sudden attempt to shut the agency down.
We got to spend money better. And if this executive branch and this White House is going to take the initiative to dig in and find those details and expose them, we applaud it. We're all on board.
USAID was one of the first targets of Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. House Republicans are now on the attack, highlighting what they see as waste embedded in the agency's humanitarian spending. It includes $1 million to boost French-speaking LGBTQ groups in West and Central Africa, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, and $425,000 to help Indonesian coffee companies become more climate and gender friendly. The sudden shutdown, led by Musk, has gotten the support of the president.
He's done a great job. Look at all the fraud that he's found in this USAID. It's a disaster what the people, radical left lunatics.
What's up, friends? Welcome back. Adam is here. Okay, so this just happened, and it is absolutely massive. A California federal judge named Susan Illston issued a ruling blocking parts of Trump's sweeping government overhaul, citing that he bypassed Congress and proper legal process. However, the dramatic framing, entire presidency frozen, Trump pacing like a caged animal, is heavily exaggerated clickbait language, not factual reporting.
Another vote to fund the government has come and gone, and still the shutdown continues. This is already one of the longest in U.S. history. So is there any indication of what and when this might end? Here's ABC News reporter Christiane Cordero.
A ninth vote in the Senate today to fund the government ended as it started, with little common ground between each side of the political aisle. But according to the Associated Press, a key decision from a judge today could change how many people are caught in the crosshairs. The AP reports a San Francisco judge ruled the administration must stop firing people during the government shutdown, saying the cuts are politically motivated. As the government shutdown begins its third week, roughly 4,000 federal workers have been laid off, with another 750,000 furloughed, not expecting a paycheck until the shutdown ends.
The actual ruling was a targeted injunction on specific agency restructuring actions, not a shutdown of the entire presidency. Don't trust sources that write this way. They are designed to manipulate emotions, not inform. She issued an emergency nationwide injunction that halts Trump's entire government restructuring plan across all 20 agencies. 20 agencies. That is not one department. That is not a corner of the bureaucracy. That is the entire federal government.
The federal judge is temporarily blocking the Trump administration from laying off thousands of federal workers during the government shutdown, calling the move unlawful. Today's order stems from a lawsuit filed by labor unions, including the American Federation of Government Employees. This comes as the White House budget chief is warning layoffs will likely reach, quote, north of 10,000. That's permanent layoffs, not just furloughs.
The Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Education, the Environmental Protection Agency, all of them frozen. Every single plan Trump had to defund agencies, to fire career civil servants, to reorganize departments, to consolidate power in the White House, all of it came to a screeching halt the moment Judge Illston signed her order.
Everett, what is your reaction to the temporary block from this judge, and do you think it will hold?
Well, Jake, first of all, thank you for having me. And I am ecstatic. I think that the judge made the right call. The judge has declared that this is illegal, just as we have always said it was illegal, and we will continue to fight this if we have to. Do I think it will hold? I think that ultimately, in the end, right will prevail because we're on the side of right. I think that it will.
What does this mean for the more than 3,500 workers who have already been permanently laid off? Will they get their jobs back?
Well, I think that what has happened, there was a RIF notice sent out. The action hadn't been taken yet. So I'm uncertain at this moment as to whether they're going to try to go through with those actions or let those actions lay in limbo until there was a final decision made here.
And here is the part that is making Trump lose his mind. The freeze lasts for 14 days while the appeals process happens. 14 days where Trump basically cannot do anything related to his signature policy initiative. 14 days where his government comes to a standstill. But everyone paying attention knows the truth. Those 14 days are just the beginning, because once the appeals start, once the legal arguments get made, once the courts actually look at what Trump was trying to do, this injunction is almost certainly going to stand. Not because judges are biased, not because of some deep state conspiracy, but because Judge Illston is right. Trump cannot restructure the government without Congress. That is constitutional law. That is the separation of powers. That is the very foundation of how the American government was designed to work. The president does not have the power to defund agencies. The president does not have the power to reorganize agencies. The president does not have the power to fire civil servants who are protected by law. Congress controls the budget. Congress has the power of the purse. Congress decides how money gets spent and where it goes. And Trump either forgot that or ignored it, or simply did not care. And now he is paying the price in the most humiliating way possible. A single judge in California just told the President of the United States that he cannot govern. That is not a blow. That is an annihilation. Now, here is what makes this even more devastating for Trump. This is not happening in isolation. This is not one rogue judge causing trouble. This is the third massive judicial smackdown in the last month alone. Let me run through the list so you understand just how badly Trump is losing in court right now. First, the Supreme Court temporarily paused Trump's tariff policy. That was a warning shot. The Supreme Court does not issue stays lightly. The Supreme Court does not pause executive policies unless they see serious legal problems. And they saw serious legal problems with Trump's tariffs. Then the appeals court came back and said those tariffs are illegal, not questionable, not concerning, illegal. And the vote was 9-0. Every single judge on that panel agreed that Trump's tariffs violate federal law. That is not a close call. That is a unanimous declaration that one of Trump's signature policies is unconstitutional. Second, the Supreme Court rejected Trump's push to overturn birthright citizenship. Trump wanted to end birthright citizenship through executive order. He wanted to rewrite the 14th Amendment all by himself. And the Supreme Court said absolutely not. The president cannot overturn the Constitution with a pen stroke. The president cannot erase constitutional amendments because he feels like it. That requires a constitutional amendment. That requires Congress. That requires the states. That requires a process that Trump tried to skip entirely. And the Supreme Court shut him down completely. And now, third, you have Judge Illston's emergency order basically shutting down the entire government restructuring plan. 3 massive losses in succession. 3 different courts telling Trump that he is operating outside the law. That is not bad luck. That is a pattern. That is a complete judicial apocalypse for this presidency. And the numbers back this up in a way that should terrify anyone in the White House. Trump has an 80% policy loss rate in court. 80%. That means out of every 10 things Trump tries to do, 8 of them get blocked by judges. 8 out of 10. That is not normal. That is not what happens to presidents who operate within the law. That is what happens to presidents who constantly try to do things that are unconstitutional. That is what happens to presidents who think the rule of law does not apply to them. Trump is losing 80% of his cases because 80% of what he tries to do is illegal. The courts are not the problem. Trump is the problem. But here is the part of Judge Illston's ruling that cuts the deepest. She wrote something in her decision that every Trump supporter needs to read. She said that Trump's approach to executive power in his second term is completely different from his first term. She acknowledged that in his first term, Trump at least tried to comply with court orders. He at least tried to follow the legal process. He at least consulted with lawyers and made some effort to stay within the lines. But in his second term, she said, Trump has abandoned all pretense of following the law. He is just doing whatever he wants. He is assuming he can get away with it. He is treating the Constitution like a suggestion rather than the supreme law of the land. And then she said something that is going to follow Trump for the rest of his political life. She said, "That is not how this country works. That is not what the Constitution allows, and I am going to stop you." A federal judge looked at the President of the United States and said, "I am going to stop you." And then she did. Now let me tell you about Trump's reaction to all of this, because it tells you everything you need to know about his psychological state right now. There was a governor's meeting not long ago. Trump was sitting there with governors from various states, trying to discuss policy, trying to pretend that he was still in control. And apparently someone told him about a note from the Supreme Court, indicating that they were not going to help him with his tariff agenda. They were not going to bail him out. They were not going to overturn the lower court rulings. They were going to let the losses stand. And Trump just stood up in the middle of the meeting, in front of dozens of governors. He stood up, walked out, and started yelling, "Disgrace, disgrace." He called the courts a disgrace. He called the rule of law a disgrace. He called the Constitution a disgrace. The President of the United States walked out of a room full of elected officials screaming that the founding document of American democracy is a disgrace. That is not leadership. That is a breakdown. That is a man who cannot accept that there are limits on his power. That is a man who is psychologically unraveling in real time because he is losing and he does not know how to handle it. And this is the key insight that everyone needs to understand. The emergency order from Judge Illston is the moment where Trump's presidency becomes functionally over. Because if you cannot execute your agenda, if courts are blocking everything you try to do, if you cannot restructure government agencies, if you cannot implement your policies, if you cannot fire the people you want to fire, if you cannot spend the money you want to spend, then what is the point of being president? What is the point of having the office if you cannot actually do anything with it? Trump is president in name only at this point. He has the title, he has the residence, he has the plane, he has the seal, but he does not have the power. And that is a humiliation that is going to define the rest of his time in office. Every day, he is going to wake up in the White House, walk into the Oval Office, sit behind the resolute desk, and realize that he cannot do anything meaningful. His agenda is blocked, his policies are frozen, his plans are dead, and there is nothing he can do about it. And then you add the 700+ lawsuits. 700. That is not a typo. Trump is facing over 700 different lawsuits right now. That is not something that happens to normal presidents. That is something that happens to people who have broken the law repeatedly, who have defrauded people repeatedly, who have used their office for personal enrichment repeatedly. 700 lawsuits means 700 groups of people who believe they have been wronged by Donald Trump and are demanding a court make it right. Each one of those lawsuits is going to move forward. Each one is going to require Trump's attention. Each one is going to drain his time, his resources, and his mental energy. Each one is going to produce discovery, depositions, documents, testimony. Each one is going to produce headlines that remind the American people that their president is also a defendant. And Trump is going to lose most of them. Because the evidence is against him. Because the law is against him. Because you cannot defraud people and not face consequences forever. The appeals are failing fast, too. Trump's legal team is appealing every loss. They are appealing the emergency injunction. They are appealing the tariff ruling. They are appealing the birthright citizenship decision. They are appealing everything. But the appeals are not working. The appeals courts are upholding the lower court decisions. The Supreme Court is declining to help Trump. The Supreme Court, which has a conservative majority, which has Trump-appointed justices, is looking at his cases and saying, "No, you are wrong. The lower court was right." That means Trump is running out of options. He is running out of places to go. He is running out of courts that will even hear his arguments. And at some point, probably soon, Trump is going to have to accept that he has lost, that his entire agenda is blocked, that he cannot govern anymore, that his presidency is effectively over even though he still has years left in his term. Let me break down what Judge Illston actually did and why it is so significant, because I do not think people fully understand the power of a nationwide injunction. This is not a judge saying, "I think you should reconsider this policy." This is not a judge saying, "Let's have a hearing next month." This is a judge saying, effective immediately, the president cannot do what he is trying to do anywhere in the United States. Nationwide. Every agency, every department, every plan, frozen. That is extraordinary power from a judge. And judges do not exercise that power lightly. They only do it when they believe the president is clearly violating the law, and Judge Illston believes that. She looked at Trump's government restructuring plan, which was massive in scope, and she concluded that it was unconstitutional executive overreach. Trump was trying to defund agencies that Congress had funded. He was trying to fire civil servants that Congress had protected. He was trying to reorganize departments in ways that Congress had not authorized. He was trying to consolidate power in the White House in ways that violated the separation of powers, and Judge Illston said no. She said Congress has to approve budget changes. Congress has to approve restructuring changes. The president cannot do this alone, and then she halted everything. The 14-day freeze is just the beginning because here is what is going to happen next. Trump's lawyers are going to appeal. They are going to file emergency motions. They are going to ask the appeals court to stay the injunction, and the appeals court is probably going to deny that request because the judge's reasoning is solid. She is right about the law. She is right about the Constitution. She is right that Trump overstepped his authority. And appeals courts do not overturn correct legal decisions just because the president is angry about them. So the freeze is going to hold. And while it holds, Trump cannot do anything related to his government restructuring plan. And as the days turn into weeks, and the weeks turn into months, and the appeals drag on, Trump's entire agenda is going to remain frozen. By the time the courts finally resolve all of this, Trump's presidency will be over. Someone else will be president, and this whole restructuring plan will be moot. Now, let me connect this to the broader pattern of judicial defeats, because I want you to see just how coordinated this judicial rejection of Trump has become. The tariffs case is devastating for Trump. The appeals court ruled 9-0 that Trump's tariffs are illegal. 9-0. That means liberal judges and conservative judges alike looked at Trump's trade policy and said it violates federal law. That is not a partisan decision. That is a legal decision. And it means Trump's entire trade war agenda is probably unconstitutional. He cannot impose tariffs the way he has been doing. His biggest policy initiative is blocked. The birthright citizenship case is equally devastating. Trump wanted to end birthright citizenship through executive order. He wanted to overturn the 14th Amendment by himself. And the Supreme Court said absolutely not. The 14th Amendment is part of the Constitution. The president cannot rewrite the Constitution with an executive order. That requires a constitutional amendment. That requires Congress and the states. That requires a process that Trump tried to skip. And the Supreme Court shut him down. So you have three massive defeats. Illston on government restructuring, the appeals court on tariffs, the Supreme Court on birthright citizenship. Three different judicial bodies, all saying the same thing. Trump is trying to exercise power he does not have. Trump is operating outside the Constitution. Trump needs to be stopped. And they are stopping him. The 80% policy loss rate is stunning when you actually look at the numbers. 8 out of 10 things Trump tries to do get blocked by courts. That means Trump is losing on the merits most of the time. He is not losing because of technicalities or procedural issues. He is losing because his policies do not pass constitutional scrutiny. He is losing because he is trying to do things that the law does not allow. He is losing because he does not care about the rule of law, and the courts are holding him accountable. Judge Illston's observation about Trump's first term versus his second term is particularly important because it shows that judges are paying attention to Trump's escalation. In the first term, Trump at least tried to follow the law. He at least consulted with lawyers. He at least went through some process of trying to comply with court orders. But in the second term, Illston said Trump has abandoned all of that. He is just doing whatever he wants. He is ignoring court orders. He is trying to use executive power in ways that are clearly unconstitutional. And judges are noticing. They are responding. They are shutting him down. The emotional breakdown when Trump heard about the Supreme Court note is significant because it shows how fragile Trump's psychological state has become. He cannot accept losing. He cannot accept that there are limits on his power. He cannot accept that the courts are checking him, and when he found out that the Supreme Court was not going to help him, he just exploded. He walked out of a governor's meeting yelling, "Disgrace." That is the behavior of someone who is completely unmoored from political reality. That is the behavior of someone who thought he could do anything and is shocked to discover that he cannot. That is the behavior of someone who is psychologically breaking down under the pressure of losing. And the fundamental issue here is that Trump's entire second term has been built on the idea that he can do whatever he wants because he has the power of the presidency. But that is not how the Constitution works. The Constitution is built on checks and balances. The Constitution is built on the idea that the president has limited power, and Congress has power, and the courts have power. And when the president tries to exercise power that he does not have, the courts stop him. That is what is happening now. That is what will continue to happen as long as Trump keeps trying to overstep his constitutional authority. And Trump cannot learn that lesson. He cannot accept that lesson. And so he keeps pushing and keeps losing and keeps getting more desperate and more erratic. So let me lay out what this emergency order actually means for Trump's presidency and what comes next, because the next few months are going to be brutal. The emergency injunction freezing Trump's government restructuring plan means Trump cannot implement his agenda. He cannot restructure agencies. He cannot fire civil servants. He cannot consolidate power the way he was planning to. That entire strategy is blocked. That entire plan is frozen. And when the 14-day stay expires, Trump is going to have to deal with appeals and probably years of litigation before any of this gets resolved. By that time, Trump's presidency will be over. The pattern of judicial defeats means that Trump's presidency is effectively over in terms of his ability to accomplish his agenda. He came into office with a plan to restructure the government, impose tariffs, and consolidate executive power. Courts have blocked all of that. Courts have made clear that Trump cannot do these things. Courts have made clear that Trump is operating outside his constitutional authority. And so Trump is stuck. He cannot do anything that requires congressional approval. He cannot do anything that is clearly unconstitutional. He cannot do anything that courts might challenge. And that leaves Trump with almost no room to maneuver. The 700-plus lawsuits are going to continue to drain Trump's time and resources. He is going to have to deal with litigation over sexual assault allegations. He is going to have to deal with litigation over fraud. He is going to have to deal with litigation over election interference. He is going to have to deal with litigation over everything he has ever done. And each lawsuit is going to require preparation. Each lawsuit is going to require lawyers. Each lawsuit is going to require Trump's attention, and he is going to lose most of these cases because the evidence is against him. And when he loses, he is going to face judgments against him. He is going to have to pay damages. He is going to have to accept that he has been found liable for his conduct. The appeals are not working and they are not going to work. Trump's legal team has been appealing everything and losing everything. The appeals courts are upholding the lower court decisions. The Supreme Court is declining to intervene. And that means Trump has no path forward legally. He cannot win in court. He cannot overturn these rulings. He cannot get his policies back on track through the judicial system. And that leaves Trump with no options. The connection between this judicial collapse and the other crises facing Trump is important. He is losing in court. He is losing the Iran war. He is facing Epstein exposure. He is facing conviction on hush money charges. He is facing potential impeachment. All of these things are happening at the same time. All of these things are converging on Trump, and he has no way to manage all of them at once. He does not have the political capital. He does not have the time. He does not have the energy, and so everything is falling apart simultaneously. The emergency order from Judge Susan Illston is the moment where Trump's presidency becomes officially paralyzed. This is the moment where his ability to govern is completely shut down. This is the moment where everyone understands that he cannot accomplish his agenda. He cannot implement his policies. He cannot exercise the power that he thought he had. And from this moment forward, his presidency is just going through the motions. He is just occupying the office. He is not actually governing anymore. He is a lame duck president with years left in his term and absolutely no ability to do anything with that time. That is the reality. That is what Judge Illston's emergency order means. And that is the end of Trump's presidency in any meaningful sense. Stay tuned, because it only gets worse from here.